Welcome to the Heart of Giving. The Heart of Giving is what you do every day and you give of yourself. This program is talking to you about the nonprofits that do that every day. We're so pleased you could be with us, and today we have a wonderful program to present to you. We have the Pathways Volunteer Hospice Executive Director, Cindy Stovgaard. And Cindy, we're so glad to have you here, and just the title tells us that you deal with people that have a need at a time when we're all going to face, but you want to put off as long as possible.
Absolutely.
So tell us what you're involved with.
Pathways is a volunteer model hospice, and that word alone scares people. But hospice is a philosophy of care, and we tend to look at it as living, not preparing to die, but living, and living life as best as you can for as long as you can. And our mission is to provide compassionate care for families, all parts of the family, who are living with illness and loss, and that encompasses a lot of area.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And what do you do for that? I know that's the goal, but what services do you provide to make that happen?
We provide in-home supportive services. If someone is hospice appropriate, we will pull together the hospice team that will deliver in-home care for someone who's facing a terminal illness or going through an end-of-life situation. We provide counseling for the families. In fact, one of our very large flagship programs, our children's bereavement program, was born out of the hospice circle of care, because grief counseling is a part of that, and we found, oh gosh.
You mean family grief counseling?
We found that children were being kind of left out of the picture about 15 years ago, and so we developed a special program just for children in grief. And but Pathways really comes in when all the doors have shut, and we help families access care, whatever that would mean to them. Perhaps someone needs a little more in-home custodial service. Maybe they need some social work service. Maybe they need some medical service that they're not accessing themselves because they either don't know they qualify or they don't know how. So we come in a little bit like a middleman you want to have, because we can assess the situation, do some case management, or what I call care management, and just help people get on a road that leads them to their journey, whatever that's going to be for them. It could be someone who is dying of a terminal illness. It could be someone who is just frail and has a chronic illness, or it could be a family who has had a death and doesn't know what to do or how to cope.
So they would call you in different stages.
People can call. In fact, one of the things we joke about is Aaron Stiebel, who is a deputy for Supervisor Don Kanabe, used to say, if you don't know what to do, call Pathways. They'll figure it out. And we like that, actually. We don't believe that we're the answer to everything, but we care about everybody. And if we're not the answer, we'll help them find their way.
Well, in assessing them, if you see that it's terminal, and it could turn into a long terminal, do you keep assessing them along the way, or?
Yes.
I guess I'm not understanding exactly. Well, I understand, but when you're dealing with people that are at this stage of their life, sometimes they stay that way for a long time, sometimes a very short time.
Right. Well, let me define hospice for you,
okay,
and for everyone else,
please.
Because that's really what people mistake. Hospice care is for someone whose illness could, and I could, claim their life in 6 months or less. Obviously, no one knows for sure. Nobody has a crystal ball. Even our physicians don't. But in a physician's best estimate, they need to write an order that would say, yes, this person is hospice appropriate, because if left to run its natural course, their illness could claim their life in 6 months or less. Hospice is not about curative treatment, which is what confuses people, because they think, oh gosh, if hospice comes in, all hope is gone. And that's so far from the truth. But if someone is eligible which means there is a curative treatment out there that will help them, then they're not hospice appropriate, and they shouldn't be on hospice. So that's why you don't get people on hospice programs for a very long time, because the prognosis is normally 6 months or less. Doesn't mean miracles happen. That doesn't mean they do better because their care gets better. But the federal government regulates the hospice benefit, and so there are benchmarks and criteria. So they are assessed every 3 months, and if they are still hospice appropriate, they will continue on. If they are not, they will be discharged.
Discharged from hospice care.
Yes.
Well,
People with long-term illnesses aren't necessarily hospice appropriate, and that's what Pathways Board of Directors realized along the way, and so we developed our caregiving program, and we operate it similarly to our hospice program, in which we train volunteers who go out and become patient companions and help with home supportive services. But these people have chronic illnesses or just need some help to stay independent in their home, because we find, I mean, there's surveys, studies, but we know in our hearts that most people just want to be home. And so our volunteers and our staff help them achieve that, and help families help navigate the care for their loved one so that they can accomplish those things.
in hospice care, are you eligible to go back in the hospital, or does hospice care mean that you're just kind of making sure that you're comfortable until?
Great question, because that's what people are fearful about.
Good.
There's never, you can do anything you want, but if someone is on hospice and for some reason they want to go back into the hospital, because of all the governmental regulations, hospice has to, they call it revoke. They have to discharge that person while they're in the hospital, because otherwise you have dual services happening, and that can't happen. But if you are hospice appropriate and on a program and you're getting the quality and proper care that you should, there usually is not a reason you would need to go back into the hospital. So people think that hospice is so definitive that you can't do some things. And then I go back to, you can do almost anything you want. It just, that means you might need to step off of the hospice program, because it's not about curative. It's about palliative care, which is care and comfort for as long as you are living. It keeps people pain-free, it keeps people comfortable, it keeps people doing what they want to do. Hospice is a patient-directed service. And again, I don't think people understand that all the time. And I think one of our gifts that Pathways brings to the table is we help families realize that. You know, this is about you. Yes, your medical community is telling you these things, and I'm sure they're right, but at the end of the day, it's your family, it's your life, it's your decision. And we become their shepherds, or their chaperones through the process to help them get what they want.
Well, you're not only dealing with the patient, but you're also dealing with the family.
The whole family.
And what do you do for them? Because it's a terrible time to go through.
Oh gosh, I think that hospice in general does take care of the whole family. Pathways even more so, because that's probably my biggest soapbox that I stand on. I always tell people I was a family. I was thrust into taking care of my father. My siblings lived out of town. I was here all by myself. I have little kids at the time. And I didn't particularly like my dad. My parents had divorced, and I was thrust with this situation and this care. And so I always say, I was a family that walked through that. And so my passion for Pathways is to make sure that we address the needs of the family even more so than is required, if you will, by a hospice program.
In what way?
Well, not just counseling, because that sounds so clinical, but really intervening and helping problem solve and getting to the root of the emotional and, you know, psychosocial mumbo jumbo, but psychosocial things that are going on. When I walked through my situation, I felt like I was drowning, and I was worried about my little kids being involved in all of it.
Got alone.
I had to drive back and forth. I didn't have a lot of network at that time. I was getting some coaching from my sister-in-law up north, and at that time, Memorial Hospital had their hospice program still, and they were my lifeline. And we actually model our a bit of our program after them, because they were, every time I picked up the phone for help,
They were there.
Sue Ellen on the other line was there and took care of everything. And she wasn't a nurse or anything. She was the one who just answered the phone and received me. So what do you do for families? You find out what their issues are, what's really bothering them. You know, not every family's Leave It to Beaver.
And what about children?
Children especially. We developed a very large children's bereavement program because kids were falling through the cracks. And while hospice runs in and takes care of the patient and the adult caregiver, the kids were getting left behind. And so Pathways, actually in response to some requests from our school district, came in and started providing children's grief support on campus, not only for family situations, but because of the myriad of crazy crisis things we have on our campus these days, drive-by shootings, deaths, football players collapsing on fields.
And you have volunteers that help you.
We do. Our volunteers are supervised by a clinical staff member for counseling, but grief is normal, and it's only clinical when there's complicating factors. And so the best person to help someone in grief is someone who's walked that path before.
Well, I thank you very much. This has been, it's been eye-opening.
I say hopefully enlightening.
Yes, that's right. That's a better word. Enlightening in helping to understand what you hate to have to try to understand when you're going through it.
Right.
So if you have a better understanding of hospice and the volunteer hospice, and the people that work with you and volunteer are to be commended. And I thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for having me. You bet. Thanks a lot.
Nice to see you.
Well, here we are. 2 good programs, and I know you're going to find out more at our next one. See you there.